I visited the celebrated nutritionist Patrick Holford at his home in the Black Mountains in Wales. Holford has been working with nutrition since the early 80s, when it didn't exist in any formal capacity. He doesn't hail from a scientific background. In fact, his degree in the late 70s was in experimental psychology from the University of York. But this, together with insights from his own personal experiences, led him to be interested in what were radical ideas in psychiatry. The young Holford came across work such as Dr. Carl Pfeiffer's Mental and Elemental Nutrients, famous for Pfeiffer's Law. For every drug that benefits a patient, there is a natural substance that can achieve the same effect. With admirable chutzpah, as a young man, Holford jumped on a plane to the USA and went to meet Pfeiffer, and later to Canada and California to establish contact with Dr. Abraham Hoffa and Dr. Linus Pauling. Twice Nobel Prize winner, one of the founders of the fields of quantum chemistry and molecular biology, Pauling was an advocate of the controversial use of large doses of vitamin C, to which he had been introduced by Hoffa. Pauling published a seminal paper in 1968 on orthomolecular psychiatry, which started with the influential statement, "The functioning of the brain is affected by the molecular concentrations of many substances that are normally present in the brain. The optimum concentrations of these substances for a person may differ greatly from the concentrations provided by his normal diet and genetic machinery." This statement highlighted the increasing lack of essential nutrients in food, and also the principle enshrined in Liebig's law, which stipulates that growth is not dictated by the total resources available, but by the scarcest resource, the limiting factor. Holford met Pauling twice, and the two corresponded at length. Pauling agreed to be a patron of Holford's Institute for Optimum Nutrition, telling his disciple, "Patrick, follow the logic. It's the logic that counts." Holford built up his empire in the first instance in 1981, retailing a book out of the back of his Skoda. After retiring from ION, he wrote the Optimum Nutrition Bible, which sold several million copies and is translated into over 30 languages. The book is currently fueling a growing awareness of the principles of optimum nutrition in China. Are supplements necessary? Surprisingly, it is still a battleground. A new breed of nutritionists with an anti-supplement bias who have emerged through the medical establishment are only the latest wave to tell us that eating food and taking Big Pharma's medications will suffice to attain optimum health. I took that view myself with my animation on vitamin C, a nutrient the baseline of which plausibly can be satisfied by eating vegetables. However, when it comes to many others, there is a strong argument that the conditions of our existence in Western society have been so far degraded from that which we evolved in that supplements have regretfully become a necessity. To take just 4 examples which point to a need for supplements. Fully clothed, indoor, and protected by sun cream, we become deficient in vitamin D. Our crops, grown in nutrient-deficient, lifeless soils by industrial agriculture, have plummeting amounts of zinc and iron. Our sanitized environments have insulated us not only from bacteria that is challenging to us, but also that which benefits us. As well as the contraction of the consumption of oily fish in our diets, which is contributing to omega-3 loss, in their book, What Your Food Ate, Dave Montgomery and Anne Baclay focus on the critically diminishing omega-3 levels in dairy products and meat from animals fed not grass as they should be, but grain. A really dazzling chemist, he has successfully wooed the cream of international and institutional medicine to support his recent cause, the Food for the Brain project. This has established a strong challenge to conventional medicine, which has made little progress with Alzheimer's drugs that rest upon the increasingly shaky-looking amyloid hypothesis. Holford, in contrast, has argued for the vital importance of addressing dietary and nutritional factors. In recent years, Holford has set up a farm and retreat centre in the Black Mountains of Wales. It's fascinating that he is now growing a large part of his own nutrition. By this action he has proved that, as much as he values the roles of supplements, nutrient-dense food is for him the gold standard.
In essence, it's kind of a model for how to live in a sustainable way. So most of our power we derive solar and sell back to the grid and buy a little bit of electricity. Our water comes from the mountains. I haven't bought a vegetable or fruit for a very long time, so we're growing as much as we can in a highly sustainable way.
So Patrick has alpacas here in this field. And do they come when they're called?
They may do. We'll find out in a minute. Hey Wolfie, come and say hi. They like you. Yeah.
They're so dear. Ooh, what's that?
Yeah. And generally the alpacas will protect the chickens from foxes. Foxes don't like alpacas.
You're particularly interested in aspects of nutrition?
Well, yeah. I'm a pegan. And that's like, the P is for pescatarian, for good reasons. I think we have to eat marine food. And the E is for eggs. And otherwise I'm effectively a vegan. I have very little meat. I have no milk. I usually say I'm 67. I'm still breastfeeding from another species of animal. Do you think I'm weird? Because there's no mammal that keeps consuming dairy products past that rapid infant growth phase. To build a brain, you've got to have omega-3 and you have to have phospholipids, and phospholipids are really rich in eggs. We catch the water from the roofs of our buildings and they go into these tanks in here, and then from there they're going to go all the way down to where we grow the veg. So, you know, step by step we're making this as sustainable as possible, using every resource, and just, you know, it's kind of a model for how it can be done. Not in a big way, but how do we live in a way that supports us? Because the honest truth is that we are so far away from Homo sapiens design in our diet and lifestyle, and anyone with any intelligence goes, why are we obese and diabetic and got dementia and all the rest of it? And you know, it ain't the genes, because they haven't changed, so it has to be the environment and how we are living. And you know, that has to be the point of change. So we've got, you know, a bit under an acre here, and to clean up the last bit of ground, what we do is cover it. Here we've got some squashes in. So far we're effectively selling everything, and because of the retreat centre we're getting up to 18 people every weekend, and we do supply a few locals as well. And interestingly, there's a couple of places around here that do weddings. And what they want is flowers. Who would ever think of flowers as a cash crop? But we may generate more income from the flowers than we do the veg. And of course, they're just amazing pollinators. So we do plant throughout our garden, you know, flowers and things like marigolds. You know, they confuse insects and protect your plants.
It was through Holford that I first was made aware of the work of Dan Kittredge of the Bionutrient Institute. Kittredge claims to have coined the term nutrient density and is having some success in establishing a universal standard for it. Applying the science of spectrometry, the Bionutrient Institute have developed a bionutrient meter which gives an indication of the degree of phytochemicals in food, and it is argued that this corresponds to nutrient density. Elevated levels of meter readings correspond to higher amounts of soil respiration. Soil respiration is the carbon dioxide output of soil and an indication of the liveliness of its microbiome.
Fascinatingly, the one measure that Dan has found predicts nutrient density, and that's our mission here, is how to get the most nutrient dense foods, is a measure of the respiration of the soil. And if the soil's microbiome is rich, it's breathing. So the first thing we did was to test the soil for minerals and find out what it's missing, and then effectively import them. So we've been adding minerals into the soil to get the level right. You can think of it very simply as the land and the sea. So if you've got a bit of land that maybe was glaciated and the rocks get ground, and over time it gets depleted, the sea minerals, you know, selenium as an example, you know, we might need to import some sea minerals, and that could be, you know, seaweed. I mean, you know, when a baby is born, the baby gets inoculated through a vaginal birth by the mother's microbiome. So we do the same with seeds, and that is we've got a special sort of microbiome rich mix, and we soak all our seeds first, so in a sense they get inoculated with, with the right fungi and bacteria, and it makes them grow and develop their whole root network much more efficiently, and consequently the plants are much stronger. Yeah, so here we have a sort of easy to grow barrier of Jerusalem artichokes, which were a real favorite of the Victorians. They're incredible prebiotic, so they're really good at getting that whole inner microbiome going, and very easy to grow. We're growing lots in our polytunnel. Chilies are rather fantastic. They are the richest source of vitamin C of all. I happen to really like them. We've got lots of tomatoes. They're incredibly strong. I mean, we are in cold Wales, and we have aubergines and we have peppers. Cucumbers just are phenomenally abundant. When we grow tomatoes, there's nothing nicer than having a bit of basil, courgettes. Also, we're using a lot of the, the vertical space as well. So, hence we've got, these beans growing. So you can make a lot of use out of a polytunnel, and of course the soil is fantastic. Yeah, so every other day we need to do a bit of watering. We prefer to do it from above. It's kind of how nature does it. The leaves are all designed to collect the water down into the roots. And I'm a city boy. I was born on a 6th floor flat in London, so I never grew anything. I grew a marijuana plant at school in a cupboard. So, I'm an example of a, urbanized, child, disconnected from the soil. And one of the things that is so incredibly obvious is taste. I had a sort of commercial salad the other day and I just couldn't eat it. It just tasted so bad. And taste is kind of nature's arbiter of good nutrient content. And we also use a device called a refractometer, which is a kind of measure of the nutrients, polyphenols and sugars in plants. The whole concept of optimum nutrition and what our nutrients need, I knew the one piece that I was really missing was the beginning piece. How you go the nutrients in the soil into the plants and into us, and how do we make that part sustainable. And what really blew my mind was when I met Dan Kittredge, who runs the Bionutrient Research Institute. He really explained that piece, the fundamental principles, really is optimum nutrition for the soil. And my job has been, how that optimum nutrition makes us function. My mission is to literally find ways to grow so we have this incredible nutrient density. And of course, commercially, farmers want to sell, big carrots. They have no interest, there's no motivation to have more nutrients in that food. And that's what's really happened, is we've gone from, like, even the mid-Victorians, if you exclude infant mortality, were living just as long as we were, but healthier. We now have about 14 years on average of disability, meaning can't climb 10 stairs. So, we're just thinking of things like dementia as something that happens to everyone, and it's totally unnecessary. All my profound teachers, like Dr. Linus Pauling, twice Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Abraham Hoffer, they died in their 90s, but they died with an absolutely sharp mind. You might lose your hair, but you don't need to lose your memories. And so back in those, even mid-Victorian, which, we can go a lot further back into tribal environments, there was nutrient density in the food that they eat. And now all our ultra-processed foods have so little nutrient density. And because we eat less, we actually eat less because we exercise less, we've got less food without nutrients to nourish ourselves. And even though we may not immediately suffer from scurvy or beriberi, like serious deficiencies, we've got this background of lack of nutrients, and eventually body systems start to shut down. And in effect, it's the same thing driving dementia, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disease. It's just kind of where the problem first hits. And that's what's being completely missed by the pharmaceutical industry. You try to find, one thing for each disease. So at the moment, we have an entire food industry and drug industry that is, privatized and making money. And then the social system has to pick up the adverse effects of that, of that, and that's why, healthcare is failing. I mean, NHS is, close to 200 billion a year. We're talking about almost 20% of GDP going into healthcare. I mean, it's completely insane. We need protein, and basically anything that you can plant in the ground that grows, like a bean or a nut or a seed, that's protein. So we love peas and we love beans. These lovely chunky broad beans are fantastic. Some people are down on peas, beans, lentils and all the rest of it, but I don't know why. They found them stuck in Neanderthals' teeth 40,000 years ago, so I think we have been eating them for a while. This is going to be our pond lake for catching water. In the winter it's full, and in the summer it drains out, but we'd like to capture a bit more water from the hills, and then that also provides us with a water source for growing the vegetables. So bit by bit we kind of tune in with nature and maximize all the potential resources. Oregano is just absolutely packed full of antioxidants, so I use these herbs in large quantities, and of course anyone can grow these. I mean, if you live in a city you can grow them. Yeah, a couple more days and we've got cherries.
It's always a tremendous pleasure meeting up with Holford, who is an inspired, free thinker and an entirely enchanting maverick.